to Eclipse Games, the podcast where we bring you the latest in gaming news, indie reviews, and everything else under the sun. My name is Kendall, and I'm here with my co-host,
Tony, aka RP Jizzle.
All right, okay. All right, so the episode is RPG themed, if that helps y'all forgive what just happened. That
Shit, that was
was
a good one. Fuck you.
that was a that was a good one. I ain't gonna lie. RP Jizzle was a good one. That's man, Jizzle was always a wild nickname to me, but I ain't gonna get into that, you know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
yeah.
Hey, respect the genius, you know what I mean? But anyway, we are here for episode 18, Eclipse Games podcast. You know, we are here for the week of, I didn't check the calendar this time, July 17th, you know. So with this week, I kind of wanted to switch it up a little bit. We usually try to stay like topical of like what's going on in the industry and everything like that. And I wanted to talk about RPGs for a very specific reason this week. As we all know, you know, everybody's been playing Final Fantasy 16. It's kind of one of the hot games of the moment in a year full of hot ass games, like crazy fucking releases. Final Fantasy 16 has kind of dredged up a little bit of a conversation, and it's an interesting one in my opinion. So I feel like we can kind of delve into that game, what makes an RPG, because you know, Tony, I know you've seen some of this combo going around, but you haven't really touched Final Fantasy, you know.
Some stupid ass shit. Yeah. Yeah, I seen it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I've seen some people I respect have some interesting takes on this one. Like, but I just
Oh
kind
no,
of want
hold on.
to.
Now, whenever somebody say I see some people I respect and they try to butter it up, what you basically just say is some people I fuck with that said some really dumb shit and I'm this close to not fucking with them.
Listen, if I can say it in a nice way, I will. All right. I'm trying to take the high road, like Michelle Obama taught me a long time ago. But I feel like there's an interesting combo there at the very least. Like that, I might have different opinions than most, but so again, Tony, you haven't touched Final Fantasy 16.
Haven't
Um,
touched it, haven't watched the trailer since the second trailer.
man, so you kind of on blackout waiting to get your hands
Yeah,
on
I'm
it.
just waiting to I'm just waiting to get my time in with it. So I haven't even looked at a gameplay trailer in the middle of this conversation.
Hmm.
I'm just going to automatically assume the conversation is stupid because it's Final Fantasy. Like, why are we having a conversation about whether or not this is an RPG?
And that's the thing. Like above all else, you don't need to have played the game really to know this, but the game is a Final Fantasy game at its core, just based on the fact that it draws from so much of the series history. You know, like I'm pretty deep into it. I'm not sure how close to the end, but I got to be near it. I'm past the halfway point basically. Like I'm at the point where shit's fucked, and that's you know just a storytelling trope. I ain't gonna spoil enough about what's happening, but yeah, it's just fucked right now. So you know I'm getting to the end, and I can tell you. Final Fantasy 16 is hella Final Fantasy. Like if nothing else, that game has so many callbacks to the series, like you know, regular tropes and things like that. There's a Sid, you know, he's the fucking goat of Sids. I ain't gonna hold you. Like he's probably like one of the best Sids. Like,
This I've heard. I have
yeah.
heard that this is the one true Sid.
Man, it's real. Like they made this shit up. Again, I won't spoil anything, but it's a part of the plot. Um, you know, there's so many little things. Like there's certain little callbacks that aren't even like on the nose. Like you know how every Final Fantasy has a Biggs and Wedge. You know, they might do that in a different way in this game. Or, you know, I'll say this: certain Final Fantasy games. You know, the trope about Final Fantasy as a series is that the series is about crystals, magic. You know what I mean? Final
Yeah,
Fantasy 7, no crystals. I ain't seen not a goddamn. I mean, if you want to count materia, you know that's kind of crystallized or whatever.
they're
But
orbs. They're
right,
orbs.
right, that's different. You know what I mean? But I kind of like the idea of that as like that game's crystal, but. This game is hella about crystals. Like these niggas is on crystal like fucking Walter White,
It's
bro. Like
it's a Septum Pearson ass game.
man, it's we went to I love the duality of the puns. But nah, it's real. Like that, there's so much like Final Fantasy DNA in it. Like, you know how early in the series I didn't really vibe with it as much because I wasn't into high fantasy and things like that. I felt like that changed before Game of Thrones, but Game of Thrones definitely had an impact on that. Like it kind of swayed my opinion in the same way that like Lord of the Rings did for a lot of people. Um, but this game takes that Final Fantasy, you know, medieval knights and kingdoms and all that and brings it to the Game of Thrones like style in such a perfect way. It blends it so perfectly. Like it's like, of course, it's a combination I wouldn't have asked for, but now I'm like, I can't believe I didn't want this whole time. So,
All
you
right, so
know,
let me ask you this: Is it
Mhm.
like a condensed version of 15? Because I feel like 15 got away from like the kings and castles shit,
Yeah,
even though that some of that was in the trailers, and then
it
it turned
did.
into like a buddy movie road trip type thing.
15 definitely like straddled that line between like that like cyberpunkish, like they had a fucking like Lexus looking car, like they had a car,
Right.
you know what I mean? So, um, nah, I feel like this game is a more streamlined and linear 15. Like the worlds, you get like chunks of world to explore and do your thing in, but you mostly going from here to there, fighting shit on the way. You know what I mean? It's not like there's towns and stuff to go like meet people and explore. And what I love about this game's like world building is how they actually have like the same system that Seven Remake did, where you walk past people and their conversations are what you hear. I think they did that in such a brilliant way in Seven Remake, and they do it here too, where like you get so much of the world just walking around, and you don't have to listen to that shit. Like you can keep moving, you know what I mean? But it'll keep playing out in the side. It makes everything feel very lived in.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely like a more linear version of that, but it's a more fleshed out. Like you can tell that they streamlined it. Final Fantasy 15 felt like they wanted to make as big an open world Final Fantasy, like the big action
Man,
packed, like yeah, to
that game was huge.
mixed results. Yeah, like there wasn't. I enjoyed Final Fantasy 15.
I
And
loved
it's
it.
one. Yeah, like we'll talk about it later as we kind of get more into the conversation about RPGs because that's the theme of the episode today. But Final Fantasy 15 had its flaws. You know what I mean? Like it was not a perfect game. It felt very much like we're in a weird era where you get your Pokemon Legends Arceus to get your Scarlet and Violet, or you get your Breath of the Wild so that they can build on that and make Tears of the Kingdom. You know what I mean? 15 felt like the archetype for 16 is basically what I'm saying. Like it felt like they built on everything that they've learned from that game in so many ways and streamlined it in a way where they're not just putting a bunch of fluff or like trying to make you you don't have to push a car in this one. Like you don't need to do none of that
Good
shit.
to know. Good to know.
so with that being said, I want to take some time to kind of delve into RPGs as a concept because the combo around this game is kind of like, is it really an RPG? Does it have enough RPG mechanics to make it uh, viable for the genre? And it's an interesting combo, like I said before. It's not really a combo that I feel makes sense because there are so many RPGs that don't really fit into that mold of what you think of as a traditional RPG. But like this game is an RPG. It's got all the real tropes. When you get away from the dictionary definition and you start talking about like what you love about RPGs, the towns and the people and the side quests and things like that, it's got all that you would want. So for me, it's a weird narrative. But I mean, just like last week, I kind of want to start there. Like, what do you think of when you think of RPG? Do you think that this kind of fits the mold based on what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a Final Fantasy game. Like I've seen enough leading up through those first two trailers to know that it is a Final Fantasy game through and through. It is an RPG. There's HP counters, visible HP counters, magic, summons, slightly I mean, because they've kind of gone away from it, but found a way to mix it in, but slightly turn-based battles.
I would see
There
that's
you
that's
go.
where that's where you kind of delve away from it. Like the battles are definitely this is action, 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 action ass
But yeah,
action.
16, because I think the creative director of Devil May Cry 5
Yep,
worked on
and
this.
you can tell like there's everything is fast paced. You know what I mean? It doesn't even
But
have
even
the.
then, if that's
Mm,
the case, then are we telling uh, Bandai Namco that Tales of Symphonia or the Tales series are not RPGs?
I'm. I knew where this. I'm glad you brought it up. I knew as soon as I brought up the concept.
Because
Yeah,
I mean, same shit.
same
Not as
shit,
fast
man.
paced, but same shit. But
Same
yeah,
shit.
I mean, when you get to like RPGs story wise, always kind of tend to focus on like macro level shit as far as like saving the world in the sense that the planet is dying and like it's very Michael Jackson in that like it's just Earth Song shit. Like that's pretty well our, especially Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is just basically 17 games of Earth Song.
Hey, listen.
Save the planet, save the planet,
Really,
save the planet, save the planet.
I wish if it was gonna pick up on Mike, I would applaud the fact that you got that Mike reference in within 10 minutes of the episode. Respect, respect,
Oh yeah,
good shit.
no, I found a way to sneak that one in there.
Yes,
But
sir.
yeah, like
No,
that's kind of RPG shit. I mean, even like Tales of Symphonia, it was a lot of hope, save the world shit. It's just kind of the way RPG stories go until you get to like the more stylized stuff like a Paper Mario, where
right.
it's specifically focused in the Mario universe. Um, but that's what they are. Like it doesn't matter what the combat system is. If those things are in it, it's that.
Yeah, and I mean that's my takeaway as well. I feel like I'm missing words a lot in this conversation because I want to respect people's different views of what an RPG is. Because I think the reason I'm doing that is because genres are bullshit. Like this is none of this really makes sense if you really
Hey,
think
look,
about
man,
it.
you can respect somebody's opinion and still say it's bullshit.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
respect your ability to say whatever the hell it is you want. But I
But
also have the ability to go, yo, that was some bullshit that just came out your mouth.
absolutely, I'll do it every time. But the thing I don't feel like this is bullshit because it's so fluid. Like RPG is such a meaningless. I won't say meaningless, but it's nebulous. Like it's just whatever it needs to be at the time. You know, like people are making the conversation up, or they're kind of starting to say that like God of War Ragnarok is more of an RPG than like Final Fantasy 16 because you get more customization out of your character, which you probably do. I mean, you get a selection of moves in 16, but like that's such a I feel like that's such a dismissive combo like of all the things that 16 does. And it's kind of frustrating. It's just I don't know. It doesn't make
You know,
sense to me.
we don't do that with other genres.
We
Like, don't
don't.
nobody look at like a an action game and go, well, this is more of an action game than the other one. Are you walking around swinging swords at motherfuckers and swinging your hands? Yeah, action game.
Right.
That's
Action
it.
is that's the
That's
word
it.
we lump in there just to make it
We
make
don't
sense, right?
we don't do that with sports. You know, like there's not a significant number of balls that you have to have
Right.
to make it a
Like
sports game. I mean, the
Windjammers is the
sport is the
sports,
sports.
Yeah. Like these genres are fluid. Like I said, all this shit means very little until you need it to mean something. And you just
Yeah,
put it there.
it's dumb, man. Like it is. I keep saying it's dumb because it's dumb from the standpoint that an RPG has those elements that I listed, and then you can do whatever the fuck else you want with it in between,
Exactly.
and that's what makes it an RPG. I
And
mean, there are
and
plenty of games. I mean, hell, NBA 2K is an RPG. If
right.
you get into my player mode, it's an RPG.
It's way more customizable than most Final Fantasy games. Like, you
Dog.
know what
You can spend all the money you want on clothes and
I
have
mean?
your goofy ass green haircuts and all that other shit. You can
Facts.
level your man up and you go through an entire story into my player. No matter how ridiculous that story is, no matter how many times they try to get Spike Lee involved, it's a story. There's
Yeah.
leveling up. There are enemies. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
shit to do. It is
You're
an
absolutely
RPG.
right. Go check out our episode 15, if I'm not mistaken, where we broke down sports games. You know, we had a good combo with my man you got on that one. But yeah, no, yeah, like there's a line that seems to be drawn where some people think of RPGs as the towns and the characters and the quests and the world building, and that's what I think when I think RPG. But other people are more focused on the actual character, like creating a character, the traditional sense of role playing game where you get to role play. There's so many games where you don't really get to do that, um like let's talk about the Final Fantasy series in particular, right? I really want to focus on like honestly, we can go really far back, but think about like even a seven. Seven had you were Cloud. Your Cloud was my Cloud. His
Same
Cloud was,
motherfucker.
what I mean? Like every Cloud was Cloud. You could customize him in the sense of what material do you want to equip? What magic do you want him to be able to do? Do you want him to be able to, he might have a weapon that's long range, surprisingly, you know what I mean? Or a weapon that does a different type of damage or something like that. But there's a weapon slot, there's an accessory slot, and there's a material slot. And that's your customization. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
that's it.
it's really not that deep, man. Like I'm surprised by the takeaways that people have, And then when you come down to the actual combat, like the non-turn based combat, and how you don't really get to strategize, it doesn't have elemental effects for like probably the first time. Like you're not using lightning to take down this or whatever. You're just kind of using whatever the fuck you want to. You do have lightning and ice and all that shit, but you just do what you want, and it leads to you having like freedom in the combat that you wouldn't have if they restricted it in a way that makes sense for a turn-based game. Um, but even all that aside, like if you look from 10 on, the series has been reinventing itself constantly, continuously, just
Right.
like changing what it is. Like Ten's combat system, I saw it in some other game recently. I wish I could think of it off the top of my head, but you don't see that particular combat system where you see the turns that you're gonna, every what character's coming up next. You can swap in party members whenever the fuck you want to. Like they really built something different with that. Flipped it on his head and made an MMO for 11. We could break down 12 all episode. Like 12 was
Man,
different. Like
different.
different as hell and amazing. Like, man, do not sleep on 12. And what's funny is I just recently was like doing research for this episode and I found an article that said, is Final Fantasy 12 really an RPG? Like really a Final Fantasy, the same
This
fucking,
shit is cyclical,
it
man.
really is. It's crazy. 13 had the linearity, 15 had the action combat. You take 13 and 15, combine them, you get and make them fucking great. You get 16. Like, this is not new. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And I mean that's the thing is that, like, is if you look at American 1 to 9, it's the same shit. Graphics are better, but 1 to 9 Final Fantasy, same shit.
Yeah.
Gameplay wise, all of that, same shit.
Yeah.
And then at 10, they went, we need to switch it up. And they were right, because they did. And in every game since, and it's only been 6 games since, they've tried to do something different. They're trying to find that place that's comfortable for the franchise going forward. Because, yeah, you do want to get to a point where you got something a little more consistent, especially with a franchise like that and the style of game that they make.
Right.
But you got to find that.
Exactly.
So if it takes them turning to the creative director of one of the best action games on the planet and then melding that with their world, cool. It's still Final Fantasy. It's still an RPG.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, Zelda is an RPG.
Yeah.
It's
I
missing
mean,
some of the quote unquote traditional aspects of it. There isn't really a level up system, but there's a mana system.
right.
Your hearts are your HP. Your link is the same link as everybody else's link, minus these last 2 games.
Right. Right.
It's an RPG.
You build on your character, improve on it's all about where you land as far as what criteria matters to you. And I've had that conversation about Zelda. In fact, that's a perfect segue because I do want to start to get into like some of the RPGs with like more surprising mechanics. I want to kind of talk about RPGs that break the mold a little bit. There's been so many of them. But that conversation about Zelda is really interesting to me because I look at it as an action adventure game my whole life. Like, because that's like another genre that what the fuck does that mean? Like, what is different between that and an action game? You know what the difference is if you play it. Like, if I'm thinking of action adventure, I'm thinking of something like Shadow of the Colossus. But guess what? I
Yep.
found Shadow of the Colossus on hella RPG lists when I was trying to like research this episode. Like, people are so confused out here. Like, we don't know what we got. But
Because
that's
everything is an RPG if we keep it a
man,
buck.
you role playing
Because
in all these.
everything is, yep,
Like,
everything is role playing.
yeah, it's what it is. It makes me think of my first thought when this came up was Kingdom Hearts. I'm like, why do we never have this combo about Kingdom Hearts? It's the same type of shit. I mean, Kingdom Hearts, you customize like Kingdom Hearts plays almost exactly like Final Fantasy VII Remake does, like to where
Yeah.
if yeah, like it feels like it was inspiring to that. You know what I mean? Like it's just like that same menu system. You kind of like if you want to pause and slow down things. I think Final Fantasy VII allows you to pause it a little bit more
Yep.
because they want to lean back into that Final Fantasy of it, which I respect. But Kingdom Hearts had the same damn combat system. Like if that's an RPG, how are some of these other games not? But I love when games break the mold like that. I think that's what pushes genres forward, personally.
Yeah. I think you obviously want to add stuff to the genre. Like I think of like Paper Mario. and their combat system where they had that timing where you could tap the A button right when Mario jumped on somebody's head and get that extra little bit of damage, or you could
Yep,
protect yourself. Like
absolutely.
you don't see that in a lot of RPGs, like before or since, where you where it's still very turn based, but you do have a say in some of the outcome.
Right, right, and I know I was going to end up just slashing shit off my list because that's definitely one that was on
Yeah,
there. In fact, we mentioned a couple that I have written down here, but Paper Mario, I wanted to mention how dope and like interactive that made combat feel, and how you get the same thing from Legend of Dragoon. Did you play that game on PS1 back in the day?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, cool, cool. Because I know it's like a cult classic to where like it's like a 50-50 thing. If you had a PS1, you might have played it, but you might have slept too.
yeah.
That's a great game. It's got some of the fucking best graphics of its time. I don't care what anyone says. Like that was what I was hoping for Final Fantasy to look like. I'm not gonna lie to you. Um, that shit was
I
beautiful,
mean, we
man.
got there. We got there
We
eventually.
did. We got there kind of fast. Like if you think about the difference between 7 and 8, 8 was good looking game, and then by 9 they was being stylish with it. Like they're like we just gonna do
Yeah,
fantasy, but we're
yeah.
gonna
They
make
were
shit
showing
less.
up.
So with Legend of Dragoon, you kind of get a little bit more interactivity with it. Like you kind of you get a little bit more customization because it's a bit of a deeper RPG. PS1 RPGs was different, bro. Like that
Man,
was a whole different era. But like I don't
yeah.
understand if you wanted to delve into this game, there was something about those crystal cases that was this thick, and you just like, okay, I'm gonna need to
I,
take some
I got
weekends.
three, four discs, and
Man, by the time you get to this three, you're like, all right, I know these characters like my brothers and sisters. Like this is real for me. But
yeah.
that was one of those absolute classics that kind of shook tradition a little bit and made it so that we could kind of get a little bit more out of combat. It doesn't always have to kind of be on this rigid path. Um, One more that I want to mention real quick. The World Ends With You needs to be mentioned in these combos because we don't
Yes, it
really talk
does.
about it enough, man. That's a
We got a remake, and it still ain't talked about.
Yes, a remake and a sequel. Like Neo, The World Ends With You. I haven't downloaded my PS5. I haven't like gotten into it yet. I played like for the first like hour or whatever. But the original, especially the original on the DS, like it was cool on the phone. And I know you can play it on other consoles now with the remake, but playing on those two screens and having to play. So if you haven't played this game, The World Ends With You is an RPG also from Square Enix, kind of sticking in that bag a little bit. Um, the way it works is you play one character with the touchscreen and another character you control with the buttons, basically. And like you equip different buttons, not keys like buttons on the controller, but actual physical buttons to the character in game to change what he can do. And different motions and stuff that you do on the touchpad makes him attack while you press the buttons to make your other character attack. And if it sounds like going like this, a little
Dog,
bit, bro, a little bit,
I
like
I felt so stupid the first time I played that shit.
yeah,
I'm like,
it's
damn, did I
crazy.
forget how to play video games? My
That shit
fingers
is
don't
a
work the way they supposed to no more.
it is a little ridiculous, but it's a lot of fun. Like when you get into it and you really like kind of get the flow of the combat a little bit, it's an amazing game. Very stylish, extremely, extremely stylish, like on the level of like the Persona series. I mean, further, honestly, if you're keeping it a buck. And I love Persona. But this game had like a sense of like this game felt like a like Digimon or something like that. Like but with like a little bit more swag to it. Great game that kind of shirked tradition in a way that I really appreciate.
So yeah, I had so I mentioned obviously Paper Mario,
Yep,
and with Paper Mario, I would have to mention Super Mario RPG because
absolutely.
they're basically the same there. Um, but the game that I mentioned earlier, I wanted to go a little deeper into Tales of Symphonia, which
Mm,
to me is the best Tales game ever. Um, just from a story and gameplay perspective, but the way they did like the arts, like your actual special moves, it was it was taking like the mana system and then throwing a fighting game into it because you
mm,
could combo the living hell out of everything.
you're really good.
And you started to see that inserted into Tails games more after that one. But man, you were juggling people. If you caught the right, you caught the right set of moves, you slide on them in, then you could have motherfuckers in the air for a minute. And then the level of strategy that went into kind of planning your healing in conjunction with that, I mean, sometimes you would literally have to tell somebody to fall back, and
Yeah,
that was something else that was kind of cool was that you could direct your teammates and go, no, you sit back, you sit back a space behind me, and you're going to heal, and that's what they did. And I think that's one of those RPG elements you start seeing in other games where you can say, I'm going to put this party member here on the field, and they're only going to heal, or they're only going to attack, or they're going to be more defensive in the way they attack. So
right.
they're going to block more and they'll attack on an opening. Or you could just say, yo, just go in there and go guns blazing. But that was one of my favorite things about that game was just the way the arts moved with the combat. And I mean, again, like you don't have to be a turn-based game to be an RPG.
Yeah,
You just,
and
throw some damage numbers up when you hit a motherfucker.
straight
The
up. I
Division,
mean,
third person shooter RPG.
a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I mean, shoot. When you start getting into what like so-called Western RPGs are, it gets very open. But Tails is a great call. There's a couple reasons why that popped up in my head because that was one of the first ones on my list too. One was the combat for that exact reason. Like I couldn't have said it better. Um, I really enjoy how Tales of Symphonia kind of gives you like that side dialogue with characters as you're going through the world, like kind of builds
Right.
on things in the same way that Final Fantasy 16 does.
And
Like
that
I
shit was
said,
fully animated and voiced.
man, crazy with my man Robin from Teen Titans. But it was he'll always be Robin. I'm
Shit,
sorry.
that was him.
Man, I could not
Oh man.
unhear it. Yeah. Yeah, that was him. Iconic voice actor, bro. Hilarious dude. But yeah, no, that game had those two elements. I really appreciate that world. But like I said, world building for me is the thing with RPGs. That's why I love them. Like that's what I'm looking for. Um, and it's interesting that you say that about the way Tales of Symphonia kind of lets you strategize with characters and push them to the back and make those adjustments when you need to. It reminds me of a lot of things in RPGs. Like it's kind of a more evolved version of like the Final Fantasy like front row back row thing, which I
Right.
kind of got introduced to through that game, which I'm sure was like way deeper in other games. But I wanted to bring up one that I actually forgot to put on here because I didn't play the series all that much, but I know my man Carl is a big fan. Bravely Default. Um, that's a big part of what that combat system is. Like choosing whether you want to attack or you want to wait and store up your power or you want to take a defensive stance. They made that the whole like that's the Bravely and default system. Like that's what that is, and it's like really deep. I did play quite a bit of the first one on DS, and it is a pretty engaging combat system that's very unique. Um, Fun fact, that game is like a spiritual spin-off successor, whatever you want to call it, to like the Final Fantasy Four Guardians of Light series. Like with the original like four Final. Yeah, there was a game called Final Fantasy Four Guardians of Light, and it was kind of like Bravely Default before Bravely Default, and it
Oh
kind of
shit.
like branched off into that style of game. Yeah, yeah. So that's pretty cool. Telling you, man, I'm dropping all the fun facts today, bro. I got all the RPG trivia.
All right. So did you play because I mentioned this game last episode when we were talking about indies. Did you play Dust and Elysian Tale?
Man, I played some of it. It's one of those games that like went on my back and burner for too long. But
That's one of my favorite games ever. And it is very much an RPG. There's a leveling
mm,
system. There's a collection system that plays into the leveling system, which is one of you don't really see that too much in RPGs where you're collecting stuff that you spend on your points,
right,
as opposed to just beating the shit out of people, getting XP, and then going from there.
right.
But that's something you started to see more of over the last probably 15 or so years. But that game is a side-scrolling platform action adventure RPG.
Hmm. Okay. I mean, hey,
Like
as
that's
many as you can fit in there.
I'm trying to think of every genre
Yeah.
that game basically encapsulates, and that's pretty much it. Platform and action adventure RPG.
And I'm gonna tell you the
But
truth, doing that and making it work is impressive.
and
Like,
it does, and
yeah.
it doesn't feel stitched together. Like you
Hmm.
don't look at each piece of that game and go, it's this genre, this genre, and this is where it is in each point of the game. It all just works together, and there's a combo system, so it's kind of a fighting game too.
Hey, why not? Why not?
And I think that was one of the games that I remember doing the combination of elements really, really good. Because it's hard to do an RPG and fit other genres into it.
Yeah, it
Because
is.
the fact of the matter is the RPG is the umbrella. You put everything else under it. Because, like we said, everything is an RPG.
All right.
So how do you take the bones of an RPG and then take other genres and fit it around it?
And still making an RPG, right?
Right, and still keep it that because it's
Mhm.
very easy to go away from that and it just becomes an action game. I mean, Devil May Cry 5 is an action game.
Right.
Like, yeah, you level your attacks up, you can buy stuff, Bayonetta. They're action games, flat out,
Yeah.
because they leaned more in that direction. But it's hard to strike that balance. And I think Dust did a really good job of striking that balance with three different genres and still making it feel like if you had to put the genres in order, it would be action adventure RPG platform.
Hmm. Okay.
And if you're fitting RPG second, then it's still a pretty significant part of your game.
Yeah. Especially for some at first blush that people would think, oh, that's a platformer,
Right.
for sure. Absolutely. So I appreciate those RPGs that do that, like that present themselves in a package that you wouldn't necessarily consider an RPG immediately, but there's a reason why this genre is so like wide open. Like there's a reason why some people have things like the Souls games or games like that under RPG. Because man, there's very few games where I've role play harder than like Dark Souls, Demon Souls, bro. Like you are extremely customizable. You pretty much a blank slate, and all you're doing is leveling up, changing your stats, changing your equipment, and you know what I mean. So
I mean,
if you
let me
go,
solo her is butt ass naked the whole game, Elden
you
Ring.
feel me? Like that's and this man has become a character. Like this is, I'm pretty sure he's been acknowledged by From Software. Like this is a
I
thing.
hope.
So yeah, like he's got to, man. I got another fun fact. Do you know anything about the Elden Ring manga?
Nah, I didn't know there was one.
Pure comedy. It's like a whole parody of Elden Ring. It's
Oh, it's not
crazy.
like an official, like,
It is the official manga, and it
it's
is
the official
pure
manga and
comedy.
it's a parody, basically.
Just go find like anything from it, and just keep in mind this is real. Like this is the official manga that they put out with this game. It's crazy. Like it's a parody on some like it's wild. It's wild.
George R. R. Martin on some bullshit. If he don't finish that other book, he doing all this
Listen,
other shit. He
man.
made a whole ass game, dog.
Hey, man. He did his thing with the world, but then he just let them kind of just go off and run wild with it. And I love it. They did it. They did amazing. Um, All right, so on my list, a few that I have to throw out there real quick. One that we kind of talked about the brothers and sisters of, but we didn't mention. We talked about Mario RPG. We talked about Paper Mario. Let's talk about Mario and Luigi because that's a hell of a series. Like amazing, like cooperative combat system between Mario and Luigi, where like they just kind of working in tandem with each other to do some of the coolest shit you see them do it in the game. Really, um, like
Some of
and
it
some
was
of
in the
the
movie.
man, straight up, it was in the movie, like because I mean, it just works so well. Everything about that game helped define Mario and Luigi more to me than like most of the platformers because just the stupid
Side
ass
note,
way,
did I
man,
tell did I tell you how childlike I got when I watched that movie? I was
man,
literally screaming out the things that were about to happen to the
I
point
get
where
it.
my girl was looking at me like, "Have you seen this already?" I'm like, "No, I've been playing Mario my whole life."
Yeah, I was about to say you should have said yes. I have 32 years
Right,
in counting. Like
right at the end, spin them, spin them, spin them, spin them.
exactly. Yep. Had to, bro. And everything that movie was perfect, bro. Like that movie was just everything I
The
needed.
best video game adaptation ever.
Straight up. And this like, this game had that same charm where like, this movie had to kind of give Mario a little bit more of a character to make him your everyman or whatever. Even Luigi got like kind of an overhaul. He's still Luigi where he's scared and cowardly and all that, but Charlie Day brought his own thing to the role. Mario and Luigi as a series, especially like Superstar Saga, because that's really the one that like I hold.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I hold that dearly in my heart. Like you can play it on Switch. I say it all the time. Go play that freaking game on Switch, man. So they put more. Um, that game had so much humor. Like the dumbass way that they talk, it lives in my head. That I believe it. That shit will never, never not.
It's
live in
it's
my
like
head,
the
bro.
kindest Italian stereotype ever.
Yes, yes. If Nintendo
It's like
had to
remember
be,
that Family Guy episode, Scusi, Baba the Boopy? It's not that. Like that was just like flat out
yeah,
offensive.
like straight up.
But it's like a combination of what people in the 80s would think Italians would speak like, but Simlish.
Yeah, right. That's the perfect way to put it. Like, and it's Nintendo-fied, so it's not offensive. Please don't be mad at
Yeah.
me. I did that damn voice. I was talking about Mario, not our fine Italian brothers and sisters. But
We're in charge of clipping it, so we can put the context in it.
yep, facts. But nah, that's a classic series. Mario has some RPGs on it, man. Like he really got some real
Yeah.
series. Like
Yeah, no, I think that might be the I mean, sports games obviously kind of became the thing in the kart racing, but I think RPGs might be second behind the platform.
I would say so personally. Like I mean, I know Mario, but the reason is that Paper Mario was the premier series, and that kind of started to fall to the wayside. Mario and Luigi had a few moments where people thought they were hit or miss. I enjoyed a lot of the series, but I know some people didn't like some of them. So I would like to see them come back and do their thing. That Paper Mario and Mario Luigi like collab game should have been way bigger of a deal than it was.
Switch 2. Let's make it happen.
Let's do it. All right, so I only got a couple more that I want to mention. So I'm gonna just kind of throw them
Did
out there.
did you play Dragon Age Inquisition?
Yes. That's actually the
Okay.
only Dragon Age that drew me in.
Really?
Love that game. Yeah. Because so let me not say that because I slept on one like Origins. My cousin will kill me if I
Heavily.
don't play that game.
Heavily.
I started it last year and like didn't get that far just because like I said, so many games come out. It's hard to go back and play an old game, especially when it doesn't play as well anymore. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like it's a dated
No,
game,
it didn't age good.
Yeah,
2 aged better. Origins did not age well.
yeah, and then I know two was divisive when it came out, so that is what it is. But no, I really loved Inquisition. That world drew me in. I love Bioware's games, so I knew I would enjoy it if they just put it in a package that could give me, and that game was damn sure special.
I love the combat in that because like you could almost turn it into like a tabletop RPG where
Yeah,
you just paused and just it felt
yeah,
like playing like Warhammer or some shit.
straight up
And
like
then
this.
unpause, everything go crazy.
Yeah, this is a
Um,
strategy game a little
yeah,
bit.
it really did turn into. I think that's the only time I've ever actually really been engrossed in like a strategy game style.
Mm,
I'm still working through my Fire Emblem issues
I
and my
almost put one on here,
Advanced Wars, my Advanced Wars issues. I'm still working on that.
man.
I'm probably one of the few people that didn't play Final Fantasy Tactics. I guess
Yeah,
got some shit to work through.
I'm,
But
yeah.
yeah, Inquisition's combat was dope. And one of my favorite RPGs ever. And I will. All right, so recently I I got what I wanted. I got what I'd been asking for the last 8 years. I got a Gex remake.
Yes, you
I
did.
made that happen. I don't care what anybody says. I made that happen. Wasn't nobody asking
Hey,
for Gex in 2015 more than I was.
I
I
can't
made
argue.
that happen. Go look at the tweets. It was
Can't
me.
argue.
I made that happen. So
Well,
now my
bravo.
next crusade is to get Jade Empire back because we have
Yes.
not seen another fucking kung fu RPG since,
Bruh,
and that
like
game was fucking incredible. I need that game back.
so Jade Empire, this is another point of shame for me. Because I played it too late. Like
Oh,
I played it. I didn't beat
I'll
it.
cut this fucking episode off.
You're not qualified to speak on RPGs. Like, I did play it, but it's like I feel like there's so much there. I'm just like waiting for that. Remake it. Like it's right there for you, bro. Like that game is incredible. The concept is incredible.
Yo,
We need
instead of
that back.
giving us fucking Last of Us Part 2 director's cut, like the first game wasn't long enough, let's go back and actually remake some shit that needs to be remade.
Straight up. Honestly. Like we don't need another Last of Us
I
part
want
two, dog.
Jade Empire back. That's my next crusade.
I can respect
It
it.
might take me another 8 years, but I'm gonna make it happen.
I can absolutely get behind it. So speaking of crusades that take entirely too long and
Yeah,
RPGs with
bring it
weird
up.
ass
Bring it up.
so there's a game, right? It's called Earthbound. It's really special, really weird fucking game. Like probably one of the weirdest games you'll ever play, especially from the era that it came out.
The
Combat
closest to
mechanics.
legal copyright infringement there has ever been.
It's amazing how they did it. They made this is a Japanese slice of life Americana game that's just trippy as all fuck. If anything about that sounds cool to you, it's what you would think it is, and probably better for especially for a game that came out on like, the goddamn Nintendo originally, and then Super
Yeah.
Nintendo with Earthbound. Um, so they made a sequel. They made a sequel called Mother 3. That game came out on the Game Boy Advance. It was a Japanese only release because nobody here seems to buy Earthbound games. Probably because if you've never seen the magazine advertisement for Earthbound, Tony, it's one of the worst ads I have ever seen. They advertised the game with a fart, bro. Like it was like the dumbest, most unappealing ad I've ever seen for anything. I'm like, of course this
Okay,
shit
wait.
failed.
When you say they advertised it with a fart, you
I,
mean like you opened the page and a fart sound came out?
no, I mean like there's like a green cloud. It's like it's got like gross humor. Like that's what they tried to sell Earthbound with for some reason because they were like, this game looks weird. Maybe we'll get weirdos or something. I have to pull it up for you to
I
give you the full
mean,
impression.
that is
No,
kind of the era of gross humor, man. I mean,
it was very 90s, but it was very
I'm not
bad.
saying that it was right. I'm just saying that I see
It
where they was
wasn't.
going with it.
If you the duality between the ad and the game is just night and day. It's crazy. Like they really fumbled the bag on marketing that game. And then I think they charged. I remember seeing like I can't verify this because I wasn't shopping or conscious of prices back in the 90s. I
I
didn't give a fuck.
searched Earthbound fart ad, and the very first thing that popped up, this game stinks. How Nintendo's marketing failed Earthbound.
Man, I'm telling you, bro. Like I'm not
Very
making this up, bro.
first.
The ad, I think that was in big bold letters. This game stinks on the top of the ad. Like, okay, I get you. You're trying to be ironic. You really just failed. It's crazy.
Okay, see, no, if that's what they did, they put this game stinks. That is not smart at
Like
all.
it's I'm
Yeah,
telling you, man, like
no.
it was
If
so
that was
heartbreaking.
if those words were physically on the ad, that's just stupid.
And I'm pretty sure I saw another ad with like, how you see the ads with all the games and the prices next to them. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure they were charging like more money for Earthbound than like most games. Like,
So
you
this
know,
game stinks. It's $80.
right, like exactly. I mean, it might actually have been 80, bro.
Fuck
Like
out of
it's
here.
so needless to say, that game didn't get ported over here when it came out. Mother 3 was only in Japan. You can play it through a fan translation and some, nefarious means, if that's your thing. I'm not that kind of guy. But I have seen,
Wait. Time out. If by nefarious means you mean Jack Sparrow, um,
I mean,
look,
yeah, in this era,
game
I'm not mad.
preservation is important. That's all I'm gonna say.
I was about to say in this era where there's an article that recently dropped that said you can only play like 13% of games before 2013.
13%.
That's nuts. That's a travesty. Like there's some classics that's you
We
just
need
can't play.
game preservation, man. So that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Um, get your Jack Sparrow on.
You know what? So you can play this game or Mother 3 through those means. It's an incredible game, man. Like I've always said that the Game Boy Advance is the sequel to the Super Nintendo in my eyes because
That's for
you know
sure.
what I mean? Yeah, like they took all the 16, 32-bit, all that like vibe that they built on with the Super Nintendo and just like turned it on its head, made sequel on sequel. Like you don't ever get a WarioWare on the Super Nintendo, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you might get a really good Mario. Like, if they wanted to make an original 2D Mario in that era, it'd probably be fine.
I think the best indicator of the Game Boy Advance being a sequel was the RPG boom on it
Mm,
because of how huge RPGs were on it and the fact that we got a
facts.
mainline Metroid game on
I was about to say, yep, Metroid Fusion and Zero Mission, frankly, like both of
it. Yeah.
them. But yeah, Fusion for sure. And Fusion being like one of the best. I still got a lot of love for Super Metroid, but man, Fusion is so replayable. Like it's so incredible. But we're not here to talk about Metroid. We're here to talk about how we need to bring Mother 3 motherfucking over here. Like we need to get this game to American shores finally. It's been too long. You have a system where you can just drop it on there. You did
Just,
this with
yeah. Literally just
Sin and
drop it
Punishment.
there.
I'm talking about Sin and
No,
Punishment on N64 came over.
and then
Like,
Punishment was on the virtual console, and I swear I was the only person that played it.
and
And
it's
it
fire,
somehow
right?
it's no, it's incredible.
Yeah.
But it somehow ended up on Nintendo Switch Online, and I'm like,
Yep.
who was asking for this? And I
I'm
loved it, but
telling
who was
you. Yeah.
asking for this?
Yeah. Like that's really, and I can tell you who's asking for Mother 3. I am.
Yeah.
I'm asking for it. So Let's make that happen, man. Let's make that happen. So
Quickly.
I was gonna save that for last, and I know we kind of getting, toward the end of the episode, but did you have any last few that you want to throw out there as like favorite RPGs with unique mechanics, things like that?
The obvious one, I mean, we was in the BioWare area, Mass Effect,
Yes.
Mass Effect 2, and
Yep.
and yes, Mass Effect 3.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
Mass Effect 1 had its flaws. The Mako sections was pretty much it, actually. That was pretty much a perfect game, minus the Mako section.
There's two: the Mako
Oh,
sections and the inventory. The inventory screen. If you remember how that shit
okay.
worked,
Okay. Yeah, I give you that.
yeah,
Because it's bad in the remake. It's
yes,
bad in the remaster
it
still.
was so much worse in the first
Yeah.
person. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Mass Effect 2 was about as perfect an RPG experience as you can get. And the level of like to that point, we hadn't experienced the RPG that felt like I don't want to say that it felt like a role playing game because again, they're all role playing games. But Mass
Right.
Effect 2 felt like a role playing game in every literal sense of that phrase.
In like
Um,
space shooter form. Crazy.
right. I mean, you obviously customize your shepherd, and I mean, he only had or she only had four voices total,
Mm.
but whatever. So if you want to make him sound like a brother, it's kind of iffy, but
But you know what? I appreciate the vagueness of Mel
yeah,
Shep's voice.
yeah. Male Shep's voice was very vague, just
I've
to the
never
point where
thought
you could
about
lie to
that.
yourself and go, it could be Will
Yep.
Smith,
Right.
you know.
Facts.
But as far as like the choice and how much that like every major game seems like their big marketing bullet is your choices matter in this game. I ain't played a game since where it felt like my choices mattered in Mass Effect. That mattered the way they did Mass Effect 2.
Hmm.
I remember. I think I told you this on another episode. I can't remember if I did, but my first playthrough of Mass Effect 2 went horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Everybody died
Yep.
because I just was, I was playing the game straight up. I would make choices that I wanted to make, and I would go, let's see how this plays out.
Right.
But then I totally forgot to make the choice of actually like upgrading my shit because it was optional.
Right.
Morden was in there. He was sitting in the lab. He had his little console next to him, and I'm like, oh, that's nice, cool, right? Resource, management and all that stuff. I'm gonna go deal with these reapers, and we just
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
see what happens. And then that last like 2 hours of the game came, and niggas went on the attack, and I had nothing for anybody.
Yep.
Everybody go.
Yep. You're not alone.
That to me, more than a perfect playthrough where you keep people like that was the most impactful playthrough of a video game I've ever had in my life because I
Mm.
was literally watching people die
Yeah.
because of the choices that I made
The
and didn't make.
consequences.
And
Yeah.
then I got to the point where it was time to actually enact this plan. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do now. Like I didn't move. Like once I got control of Shep, I didn't move for like 10 minutes. I was just sitting there like, oh, that's all I got left. And then you
Yeah.
actually finish the game and you get to that point where you're trying to escape. And everything you did before that still affects whether or not some people get out alive.
Hell
You're
yeah.
like, you're not even done. The game's over.
Man.
You're not even done. By the time I got done, I think I had two people with me. It looked
That's
like a
dope.
regular RPG party of three people.
Wow. Nah,
And
that's
I was never more like happy to play a game. Like that
right.
game made me feel like I experienced some shit and I went through something. And I've never felt that again.
Man. I'll be real. Like my runs did go pretty well. Like my first run, because I did a lot of that exact like strategy shit. I really did like read into it and was like, okay, I know I'm not gonna be on the multiplayer because that was the other way to build up your ship's like
Oh,
defenses and shit. Yeah, you could do the multiplayer instead. I wasn't a multiplayer guy, so
yeah, yeah.
I was like, yeah, let me go fuck with this little strategic table. It did kind of make me feel like I was helping to like war plan, you know what I mean? And that was kind of cool. And so most of my people made it, and I had like a nice heroic moment. It would have been way more impactful if it was like, because the end of that game, I like the end of Mass Effect 3. I don't care what anyone says. And the
All
end of
right,
the
so
we will get into that in 2 seconds. We're gonna get into it. But I was just gonna say the end of it is supposed to feel very dramatic and like, like dire and like, oh, this is our last ditch effort to save everything. Mass Effect 2 has that in spades. Like Mass Effect 2 was the dark one, basically.
yeah,
So to have that game be like this dramatic, like death filled, like like these games, the endings of them can hit a lot harder if like things have higher stakes. I'm sure that shit was like a huge moment for you. Like
man,
I can only imagine.
that should again most incredible game experience I've ever had, just because I fucked up,
Yeah, right.
and the
And it
game was
mattered.
like, no, you fucked up,
Yeah,
and we're going to
yeah.
show you exactly how you fucked up.
Yep,
And
yep.
that felt good. Like as a gamer, as somebody who critiques games and shit, like that felt good. I didn't feel like my time was wasted. Great
Right.
segue going into Mass Effect 3, because the original playthrough of Mass Effect 3, because I think we both played it before they made that little DLC switch, like that little
Yeah,
cheap tacked
yeah.
on ending. I felt like everything I did before that did not matter at
Yeah,
all, at all.
yeah.
There was
You're not alone.
nothing, and it just like it just felt flat. Like I understood where they were going with it, but it made everything I did in the previous two games feel like it didn't mean anything. And then you come through, and again, not all heroes wear capes.
Mhm.
And I wish I could remember the YouTuber's name, but the person who came up with the indoctrination theory saved that ending.
Mhm.
Because when I finally watched it, I went, I can rock with everything that happened because of this video.
I
But it
mean,
took somebody who wasn't involved in the
yeah,
game to make me
sometimes.
appreciate that ending a little bit more, because they did something with it.
Right,
But by the
right.
time I got done watching that video, it felt like, okay, everything I did before had some meaning, because it felt like the Reapers weren't just the game ending. It's like, big bad
Right.
boss, here's the game, and here's three things you can do, but you can really
Mhm.
only do two of them.
Yeah, I mean, so I will say I enjoyed the end of Mass Effect 3 because I didn't care. Like, I will never tell you it's a good ending. I didn't really give a fuck about like the greater. My thing with Mass Effect is it was about the characters. Like all the side quests wrapped up beautifully. Like everything that you had going on outside of the main mission. Like, you get to like, I mean, think about the Shadow Broker, think about Thane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Think about like everybody except the one what is his name? Zed. I don't remember his name. The one asshole party member, like the gruff dude from two, who was just a
Oh,
dick the whole time.
the
Yeah, he sucked. He
big
sucks.
dude, the big dude.
Yeah. Um, most of your party members' storylines ended in a really satisfying and interesting way.
I mean, honestly,
Um,
fuck the Caden and Ashley storyline too. It was,
I mean, they don't count. That's like generic video game character to video game
yeah,
character. Like,
yeah.
god damn, I couldn't give a fuck less who dies. Like, I and you know what's crazy, man? It really sucks to say this. I am anti-racism, but Ashley was way more interesting of a character to me. I'm like, man, I don't want to save the bigot over the just chill dude. Like Kaden was cool. There's nothing wrong with Kaden. But there's nothing particularly interesting about the motherfucker either. Like I just was like,
Yeah, Ashley died on my playthrough.
I get it. She died on my most recent, which I'm like, man, I'm not keeping this
We
horrible.
not, yeah, we not, nah, we not doing that.
She sucks a little. Like, especially in the first two games. They kind of try to redeem her in three, which is fine. Like, if you think
Racism
that
is not interesting, kids.
yeah, it's not like that's not like a cool plot device to watch someone fucking American History X their way into some alien pussy. Like, come on, bro. Like, it's
Bad,
not.
bad.
I am good. I'm good. But she was a better personality wise, a more interesting character. Like, Caden bored the fuck out of me. I'm sorry. He was cool,
Yeah,
but
Caden was generic white guy A.
yeah, man. Like, I mean, people give like the like Jacob shit from two, but Jacob's cool to me. I mean, I'm
Oh,
biased,
Kanye
but
West.
yeah, yes, Kanye fucking West. Damn, he looked like Kanye West.
He did.
That was your fun. I didn't never think about that shit. He looked a lot like Kanye. All right, okay. Well, I mean, he was okay. He was fine. It's just the storyline with his dad was
See, that's
interesting.
why he was only okay to you, because you didn't realize he looked like Kanye. That character
Yeah,
became far more interesting to me when I went, oh, he looks like Kanye West. It's Kanye West in a space game.
yep. And then you get your head candy going. Like, damn, Kanye, you did a
Yep.
pretty good job performing, bro.
Like how I make all Vin Diesel movies better by saying that everything that Vin Diesel is in is just stuff that Riddick was doing on the side.
You know what?
All of his movies are better if you just look at it as Riddick doing other things,
This is Riddick's like side shit. Yeah,
including the
okay.
pacifier.
No, yeah, that I would enjoy to watch.
Yep.
In fact, I wish he would have leaned more into that side of his acting performance. That would have been a very interesting movie. Amazing that we got to the pacifier from this RPG conversation. Incredible, like genuinely impressive. All right, so like I said, we getting toward the end of it. I think we're gonna put a button on this episode soon. Let me see if there's any that. Oh, yes, I knew. There's a few I want to make sure I just throw out there. One, we talking about choices in games. I want to throw a shout out to a Dragon Quest game that people don't really talk about that much. Dragon Quest V. This was a
Deep cut.
Dragon. Yeah, man. Like this was a Dragon Quest that I think I played later, like just off the strength of like looking for the deep cuts. Like I was like, I want to see what people really fuck with. Like that really is fun. Like not the popular shit, but the fun shit. Dragon Quest V was unique because it dealt with like a timeline. Like it spanned like 3 decades, something like that. Like you playing through this person's whole like life, and like it's like the fall of a kingdom, and like actually kind of well, I ain't gonna spoil 16, but it's a little similar to the plot of 16 now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, no, it's interesting because you actually make choices in that game. In the Super Nintendo Dragon Quest game, you make choices that impact what happens in the world and like what happens later. Um, it's one of the first games I think I remember seeing that you can choose like who you marry. Like it has like romance options. And like I was just reading this because I wanted to make sure I got every little thing about it. I didn't even think about this, but it was one of the first games that showed like a pregnancy play out. Like you get married and you gotta have a kid, and you watch the kid be born.
Oh
That game,
shit.
yeah, like it was. This is a Super Nintendo game. You know what I mean? This is a special game in that series.
Pixelated bellies.
Yeah, like man, just bump a couple little extra blocks on there. It's crazy. Um, Good game, man. Really, really fun game, and that people don't talk about enough. One more series I want to talk just as a series. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but Persona is incredible. Like we know
Man,
what's up.
we'd had to
You
do a
know,
whole nother episode on that.
straight up, honestly, especially with like 3 being remade with 5 like finally taking a series where it belonged. Like 5 really pushed it to where it needed to be because 3 and 4 are classics.
Yeah.
Um, so
I think I still got three.
yeah, and 3 was definitely the one where like again I had that like PS2 days on some like I'm looking for the cool shit. Like what do y'all like that nobody's talking about? And I really fell in love with that game. But I never finished it, so I'm really excited about Reload so I can finally complete it. And the last one I want to make sure I mention, because if we're talking about RPGs with weird and unique mechanics,
Okay,
how can
good.
you
Because
not
Jers would kill us.
mention Undertale? Like
Oh wow,
it's
you weren't going there. Okay.
now I'm
Well, I'll
interested.
mention it.
Now okay, yeah, you make sure you get that one out there. But Undertale, oh damn, did we not? It was the first one on my
No,
list.
we didn't. No, we didn't.
Damn,
We'll get to
that's
it. Go to Undertale.
okay. Okay. Before I get into Undertale, let me just say I literally forgot to mention that game that we're about to talk about because it's so obvious. Like I was like, of course I thought we already talked
We'll
about it.
get to it. Yeah.
That's how much. Anyway, Undertale is like a absolute must on this list. It's got some of the most unique gameplay I've seen. Like the fact that it has multiple endings, you can play like this is the only game where pacifist route actually sounds like it was supposed to be the way you play. You know what I mean? Like that's
Right.
the type of game that they wanted you to experience. And the way that it plays out and the different storytelling mechanics, the humor, everything about it was just like executed to perfection. It really is as good as people say. Like I know people get annoying as one of those games or people just won't shut up about it, but it's worth a try if you can get past like or if you can get with the quirky art style and the different, vibe of it. It's really, really good game. Now go ahead and tell us about the greatest fucking RPG of all time.
Yeah, we got to mention Chrono Trigger.
Yeah,
Very
we have
obvious.
to. We have to.
Just beyond the obvious incredible use of Toriyama's art style, which is like nuts
Yeah.
to even consider. The active time battle system. I mean, that's Chrono Trigger is one of the most impactful RPGs of all time. Like, and that's not just in the RPG genre. That's across gaming.
Cross gaming. Yeah.
Um, I mean, you're talking about Mass Effect 2 when depths and shit matter. Chrono Trigger did it first. Depths and shit mattered in a 16-bit SNES RPG. Like that story meant something. And then when you consider basically the second half of the game, I don't even like. I know hella people played it, and I don't even want to talk about the story because I feel like people just need to fucking experience it
Yeah.
because it's a twist that just you don't see it in gaming. That's all
Straight
I can
up.
say. You don't see it in game.
Very unique.
But it is genuinely one of the most impactful games in the history of gaming. Like up there with Ocarina of Time and Mario 64, Metal Gear
Yeah.
Solid. Like it means something to the entire gaming world.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's one of the most unique games I've ever played in my life.
Right.
Um, play it through Jack Sparrow means. If you got a DS, cop it on that. I'm pretty
Yep.
sure the cartridge is expensive as hell though.
I'm
Um,
I'm sure it's like downloadable. I mean, you can play it on your phone, really. Like it's everywhere.
well, yeah,
Um,
yeah, you can get it on your phone, but if
yeah,
you know
but
if you want that uncut experience,
yeah, yeah. Chrono Trigger, man. So again, I ain't making no excuses for myself for forgetting this damn game, but it's the game I pitched the episode on. Like it's the literal reason that I came up with the idea. So
yeah,
that's how impactful of an incredible of experience Chrono Trigger is. Like this is a game that's infinitely replayable. I told you, there's like a select few. I know I'm talking about all these Super Nintendo RPGs and RPGs of that era that I love, but a lot of them I came to later and like played them to get the experience, like because I slept on the whole genre. But like this game holds a special place for me. Like this game it has that impact to me as if I had it on Super Nintendo. I really didn't play it till I was like 12, 13 or something like that. But it executes everything so perfectly. The way that you combine people's attacks during like combat, like just that whole mechanic of text and like the exploration, the music, everything about that fucking game is just incredible. Like I don't really need to
it's a
keep
perfect game. It's a
it.
perfect game.
Honestly, there's no notes. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Like, and it's also a perfect game to kind of wrap the episode up on because where can you go from Chrono Trigger? So we'll kind of start bringing this one to a close. To let us know what
Oh, hold up!
RPGs. Oh,
Shout out to Major Nelson for retirement.
yes, shout out to him. Yeah,
Fucking
I
legend,
completely forgot about that. That is an absolute legend.
man.
Um,
20 years.
man,
Like,
Xbox will
no
definitely
matter how
miss
you
him.
feel about Microsoft and Xbox and how they run this shit, man. Major Nelson, one of them ones. That's Green Reggie.
Facts. Yep. Facts. Every company needs like a front facing person that's going to like get the community behind them. And Xbox Live is not what Xbox Live is without Major Nelson. So
Facts.
big shout
He
out to
built
him.
that community.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So that is an even better note to end the episode on. Well, yeah, man, give us a shout out. Let us know what RPGs you love, what RPGs had unique mechanics, what you think of Final Fantasy 16, because we want to hear more impressions about that and kind of keep that conversation going. You can holler at us on Twitter, Eclipse Theory, Instagram and Threads. We are Eclipse.theory. Don't forget that dot. Um,
You paid for
Definitely
that.
make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, holler at us on YouTube and on podcast services. We'll be here every week. Every Monday we'll be having audio episodes. We're going to try to make sure YouTube episodes come out close to Wednesday, so it's probably toward the middle of the week, but as close to Monday as we can get. We'll kind of try to get that cadence
We
going.
working that
But
out. We
yeah,
working that
right.
out.
Yeah. So just stay tuned. You'll have episodes every week. We're gonna try to keep this going. Absolutely. Stay locked in. Come back to us next week because we got way more good content coming for you. But until then, I'm Kendall. This is Tony, and keep gaming.